Hello and welcome to another virtual author chat at the Poison Pen Bookstore. I'm John Charles, and today the Poison Pen is delighted to have us our very special guest author, Rachel Hawkins, who is appearing with her literary alter ego, Erin Sterling. Erin's new book is out this month. It's called The Kiss Curse, and it's terrific. Before we begin our chat, though, I do want to let those listening in know that the Poison Pen does have copies of both Rachel's and Erin's books, and we would be happy to hold one or more for you or put them in the mail. Just give us a call at the Poison Pen or go online and we can connect you with these fabulous books. Now I would like to welcome Rachel as Erin.
Thank you so much for having me. It's so fun to get to chat. This is my first chat, I think, about the Kiss Curse specifically, so I'm really excited to be here.
Oh, well, thank you for taking time. Before we talk about this wonderful new rom-com, I always like to find out a little bit more about authors and who they were before they became published writers. So can you tell us about who Rachel was before she wrote her first book?
Yes. So I was always like a super imaginative kid, so I grew up reading and writing a lot. I'm an only child. We have a lot of time to ourselves to play in our imaginary worlds. But I never really thought about being a writer, I think, when I was a kid. Just because, I was living in like fairly small town Alabama. It just didn't seem like, I just thought like, okay, you've obviously got to be from like New York or maybe LA or something if you want to be a writer. But I did major in English in college. I went to Auburn University and I majored in English there mostly just because I liked it. It wasn't like some sort of like part of a plan. And I didn't even really do a lot of creative writing classes. I did a couple, but I was a literature major. Went on to teach high school English, as one does when they have an English degree. And I really loved that. But it was like one of those things where it was almost right, but not 100% right. I liked books. I liked the kids. I think if you talk to any sort of former teacher, they'll usually tell you that why they got out had nothing to do with their students and everything to do with a whole bunch of other stuff. And it was through teaching, and specifically teaching teenagers, that I was introduced or sort of reintroduced to young adult literature.
Wow.
And so while I was kind of reading a bunch of YA for things for my kids to read, I really fell in love with the genre. And it was like it reawakened this kind of like writing side of me where I was like, okay, I think this is something I could maybe do. And so I took a swing at it and it worked out for me. Thank goodness. And so that was my first book, Hex, which came out with Disney Hyperion in 2010. Oh. And yeah, I've just been sort of writing ever since.
So you did a number of books for teens and youth.
Yes.
And then at some point, you kind of took a different literary path. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, it's interesting because I'm a big believer in kind of like acts of one's life. And I think, everybody's life has like way more than just 3 or 5 acts. Like we can have, 20, 30 acts. And I'd done 10 years in YA. I'd written, I think 11 books in YA in middle grade. And I just turned 40 and it just felt like a really good time to kind of close a door. Like I sort of felt like I had done everything that I wanted to do in that sphere. And the stories that I was suddenly interested in telling were for adults. I've joked that it also sort of coincides with my own child becoming a teenager. So I wonder if like I was spending so much time with real teens, was I like, no more fake ones? Like I've got to move to the adult table for a little while. So yeah, I think that was kind of it. It was really just like an instinctive thing. Basically, I'm a big believer in listening to your gut, especially when it comes to writing and to what kind of stories you want to tell. So yeah, I just was like, okay, this feels like a good time to make the switch.
And that book became The Wife Upstairs. And if I understand correctly, it originally started out as kind of write for novella for hire project.
Yeah, it did. That has been like, and I like to talk about this because I like to tell people like there are so many different paths to publishing and books come about in so many different ways. So yeah, I owe that 100% to my literary agent, Holly Root. It came through her inbox where this company, Alloway, who they do a number of books. They do the You series. If you've seen that on Netflix, that's them. They did Gossip Girl. They did The 100. So they do a lot of that kind of stuff. And they were like, hey, we want to do modern Jane Eyre. do you have anybody that would like to do that? And so my agent knows me very well and was like, I know you haven't done adult, I know you haven't done thrillers, but this sounds insane and you're kind of insane. So like, maybe this is a good fit for you. And I just loved it. And it was actually like, I had never done write for hire before. And so I really thought, okay, they're going to give me like a 20-page outline and be like, now write it like this. And it wasn't like that at all. It was super collaborative. So when I went up to New York to meet with them, I mean, they were immediately like, you are in Alabama. Do you want to set this book in Alabama? And then that I was like, obviously I want to set this book in Alabama because I have so much to say. And so, yeah, it was a really collaborative experience that I'm so happy that I had. I have not done another book like that since, just because I sort of, now wanted to do my own sort of ideas. And, but I had so much fun working on it. And I was just really pleased and proud of how it turned out, given that like there were multiple cooks in the kitchen on that one.
It doesn't read like that at all. It was my introduction to your books.
Okay.
I loved the book.
Thank you.
In some ways, it's kind of serendipitous. I mean, you'd studied Victorian literature
Right.
in college. You had this background, this knowledge. You took this classic kind of novel, Gothic novel, and you put your own spin on it. You reimagined it. You kind of made some new twist to it. It pays homage to Jane Eyre, and a little bit of Rebecca's thrown in there for good measure.
Yep.
But it's also your voice. It's fresh. It's modern. And you mentioned how you wanted to set in the South. And I think that was interesting because it lets you kind of clue readers in who are not familiar with that geographic region, that it's not kind of the version you see in television and those other places.
Exactly. And that's a big part of why I wanted to do it. I always tell the story about how one of my very close friends is from Las Vegas originally, and she had moved to Alabama briefly. And she told me that she was like, I came down here and I thought like, okay, these are like going to be like salt of the earth people. And she's like, and then there's like, these ladies are like driving BMWs and playing tennis in pearls. And I was like, yes, we have our own kind of real housewifey-ian culture here as well, that I really wanted to sort of explore, So yeah, that's a lot of how that book kind of came about.
Well, you successfully conquered your suspense genre with your first novel. Then you moved on to another book in adult suspense, The Reckless Girls. And if I understand correctly, it's because you always wanted to write a boat murder story.
That is very correct. I grew up, like I said, in Alabama, very close to the Florida border. And so my family had a very small sailboat when I was young. My dad was in the Navy and was a sailor. And so yeah, and I'd always just been drawn to like any kind of story that had that, like, man, if you had a book that had like a yacht on the front of it and like scary font, I was in. There was like a true crime show called Dark Waters that I absolutely loved because it was this kind of thing. So yeah, this had been like a lifetime dream. And so yeah, when it was kind of time to like do the follow-up to The Wife Upstairs, I was like, well, I might as well kind of swing for the fences and do the book that I really want to do and I've wanted to do since I was a kid. And so I was really happy when my editor agreed that that was going to be the next thing. Because yeah, that was a huge amount of fun to write.
It's a really interesting book. And I think what's interesting to me as a reader is with The Wife Upstairs, you were kind of on the forefront of this new push into Gothic, this kind of emergence of Gothic into the publishing world. And this book kind of has been described as island Gothic, which I think in a sense is very true, because I think what it comes down to is in the Gothic genre, location is paramount. It's almost a character itself. So whether it's a house or a rich kind of wealthy neighborhood in The Wife Upstairs or a island in the South Pacific, location is the key. Can you talk a little bit about how you see that as a writer?
Yeah, and that was actually a talk that my editor and I had a lot with Reckless Girls, and that's a lot of what informed in that book. There are the sort of little interstitial bits of like, things from travel logs about this island and emails from people who were creeped out there and Twitter things and stuff like that. And part of that was because we really did want to build on that idea of a haunted location. Is it like actually haunted? No, but like that it has this kind of dark history. And so we were like, if this is another Gothic, then the island, the Moreau Island itself is the house. Moreau Island is Thornfield, it's Manderley, it's got to have that kind of atmosphere. And so, yeah, that was definitely something that I thought about a lot. And, you know, every time I would sort of do another draft, like my editor and I both were very much like, what other creepy details can we add? Like, we just needed it to be so atmospheric, because I think that that is such a cornerstone of the Gothic. And that's a thing that I'm still very interested in writing. The next couple of books are also very much in that vein. But I knew that I was kind of taking people at a slightly foreign location for a Gothic. Like, we don't necessarily think of like sun-soaked beaches and, you know, blue water and jungle and all that. But I think Gothic sometimes is a feeling. And so that's something that we really worked hard to capture in the book. So I'm glad it worked.
Oh, it was wonderfully successful. I think you're right. But there are those exceptions, because a couple of Victoria Holt's books.
Oh, yeah.
She set one in Hong Kong. She set one on an island in the South Pacific.
That's true. She did. That's right.
So you're kind of following in the footsteps of other writers, very successful.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I actually have a romance under the Erin Sterling name that I just sold that will come out, Lord, in like 2025, 2026. That's my sort of homage to the Victoria Holts. It's a 1960s Britain set Gothic, but it's a rom-com as well. It's, you know, a funny Gothic, as it were.
I'm already like, when is it? Is it 2025 already? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly yet when but they have bought it. So it will be out there one day. I'm really excited for that one.
Oh, and that kind of takes us into your turn towards the adult romance genre.
Yes.
I think I've written the quote down that you had put somewhere else. You said that you were a lifelong romance reader and always wanted to write a romance for ages. You had several false starts. You kind of tried normal contemporaries and none of them were working for you.
Right.
And you saw someone on Instagram saying they wanted to read a paranormal rom-com, and all of a sudden your whole brain lit up.
That is exactly it. Yeah, I grew up on romance novels. Jude Deveraux, Julie Garwood, Sandra Brown. And again, interestingly, a lot of these people have now gone on to sort of write thrillers as well, like, which I think is kind of funny. And so, yeah, I loved romance. It's still like one of my favorite sort of comfort reads. It's, you know, a genre that's very dear to my heart. And so, yeah, I really wanted to write a romance. I'd written sort of contemporary romance YA novels with Prince Charming and Her Royal Highness. And yeah, I really wanted to do that for adults. But when I kind of started, they were fine. I mean, like the first like few pages of things I have, like they're not poorly done, but I just felt like I wasn't bringing anything special to the party, I guess, as it were. Like, there are so many talented romance novelists out there. And I was like, this is not, you know, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, but you definitely want to feel like you're bringing something unique to the table. And so, yeah, seeing that Instagram post and someone saying paranormal rom-com, I was like, oh, because I'd done paranormal in my YA stuff as well. And I just loved the idea that I wanted to read a bunch of paranormal rom-coms. And so usually that's a good sign that I should write something. If I'm like, oh, I want to read a bunch of those, then I probably need to try to create one.
I think you're right. I mean, I'm sure your early contemporaries were technically proficient, but what they may have lacked was your voice. And that's the key to being a successful writer. And you have a very distinctive voice in all of your books.
Thank you.
Writing thrillers or suspense or romance. And I saw that voice. I loved you as Rachel Hawkins. And then I read the X Hex, and it was just as much magical reading experience for me as the other books.
Oh, well, thank you. That really means a lot to me.
So it had that humor and everything I loved about your writing. The X Hex is your introduction to adult romance, and it introduces readers to the Jones and Penhallow families. What can you tell us about the origin of that book?
That book, it's definitely like one of those things where I just threw everything I loved at the wall. So when I heard like paranormal rom-com, I had been working on a contemporary that was about, that was a second chance romance, a woman who had had a summer romance with a rock star and he'd come back to town and she was sort of dealing with that. And that was fun. So I sort of stole the elements for my own like work in progress, because I loved the second chance romance. I loved too, I think, having written YA, I was interested in people who like do sort of have that kind of what we call insta love, that like really immediate connection because they're quite young and it's sort of the first time they've fallen in love. And I had written that, with teenage protagonists before. And so there was something fun though about being like, okay, but like then what happens? Like now you're 30 and it's a different kind of, and of course that thing that, flamed really bright and really hot it flamed out very fast. And so like, how do you sort of come back together as adults? And so I was interested in that idea anyway. And so adding the kind of witchery to it, I almost think like the title may have come to me first. And then like, I worked the plot back from that. I knew that it was like people who'd had a summer romance in their like late teens, early 20s coming back together. I knew I wanted to do small town cozy type vibes. And then, when I came up with the X Hex, it was like, okay, well, what is that about then? Oh, okay, she's accidentally cursed him. And then everything kind of built out from there, basically.
And now we come to your new book, which is out this month, The Kiss Curse.
Yes.
What can you tell us about that book?
So The Kiss Curse follows Gwen Jones, who is Vivi's cousin from the first book and was a very popular character. So I was glad that people liked her since I knew I was going to write a book about her next. And she is dealing with both her own magic fading and a new coven in town, and of course the arrival of Wells Penhallow, who is Reese from the X Hex's older brother, who's very kind of stuffy, and he's come to town and starts up his own witch shop right across the street from Gwen's witch shop, which gives us some sort of fun competition stuff. But then, of course, because she's losing her magic and they're dealing with this new coven in town, they have to sort of team up to solve the mystery of what's going on, which is always very fun. I love like reluctant allies. And of course, starring role to Sir Percival, the talking cat. He is back and chattier than ever.
One of the things I love about the series is you have a very strong sense of humor, and it comes up in unexpected ways, like the names of the shops in town, the t-shirts that Gwen wears and things like that. Are you just naturally funny, or do you have to work at that?
I don't know. I was my high school who's I was wittiest, so maybe I've had it for a while. I like things that are funny. Like I don't think I could write something that was super serious if I tried. Like, and I am definitely a person that has always kind of used humor to deflect or diffuse things sometimes, which is also a thing that I give to my characters a lot, I think. So it's just kind of it's one of those things we all sort of have to know our strengths as writers. And that has been something that I think people have liked in my work for a long time. So I want to keep trying to provide that for people. So I usually run jokes by my husband too. Like if I think it's a really funny line, like my husband and my best friends are kind of my like sounding board for like, will this make people laugh? So yeah.
You do have a good sense of humor, and it does show up even in your Rachel Hawkins books, which might surprise people because they don't normally think of suspense,
right?
That kind of undertone of dry wit.
Right, which is something that I really enjoy bringing to the suspense books, because it also lets me go like, it sounds odd, but it's almost like I feel like I can go then as dark as I want to go, because I'm also like making you laugh. I'm also, poking a little bit of fun at these people. And so I think that it's sort of, people trust me then to sort of follow me into the dark, as it were. And again, I enjoy that. I love that in books when they're kind of sharp and sly. And so I try to add that to my stuff as well.
The X Hex and the Kiss Curse, I think in many ways, they're not just about romance, contemporary romances with paranormal elements. They're almost kind of an ode to autumn and Halloween in the books. And I think I've written it down. Yeah, you said that you like to say that this series takes the concept of pumpkin spice to a new level.
Yes.
Elaborate on that.
Absolutely. So yes, that's actually, it's like a driving thing when I'm working on these books, is that I'm always like, what is like some more like autumnal stuff you can put in? Like I want to have all of the kind of cozy bits. I think partially that's because living as I still live in Alabama, we do not get much of an autumn. Like it's still very like what I think of as sort of the traditional autumn we have in like early December. So it's already moved into Christmas season by the time we sort of get like that really nice autumnal flavor. So yeah, that's partially, I love the autumn. Like my son was born in October. I was born in November. I was married in November. Like that whole stretch is is my favorite time of year. So I just wanted I wanted it to kind of feel like, those, like there's a lot of Christmas romances and there's like Christmas Hallmark movies and all that. I wanted that kind of feeling, but for Halloween and autumn in general. So yeah, I was always going really hard on that. And so yeah, that's my joke about the pumpkin spice thing, is that I was like, it's all the pumpkin stuff. And then of course the books are kind of spicy with love scenes and what have you. So I was like, yeah, it's I've got it all covered.
Is Halloween your favorite holiday?
It's right up there, like Halloween and Thanksgiving. So my birthday frequently falls on Thanksgiving. And I also got married on my birthday. So every once in a while we have Thanksgiving, my anniversary, and my birthday on the same day. So obviously that holiday has to sort of take the cake, but Halloween is a very close second. In fact, I'm already decorating and burning pumpkin candles and it's like 95 degrees still here, but I'm going for it.
Turn down the air conditioner. Yeah,
exactly. Watching horror movies, I've got 2 black cats of my own, so forcing them into little costumes, it's a thing.
Which brings me to probably my most important question to you. When can we expect a Sir Percival fan club? And will there be merchandise?
We need Sir Percival merch, I'm telling you, because like he's very much based, although it's probably fortunate that my cats can't talk. Like I said, I have 2 black cats, Merlin and Bosworth. The Kiss Curse is actually dedicated to them. I am that in love with, I love my other cats too, but they're very special. And Merlin in particular is very much an influence on Sir Percival. So yeah, I need to get pictures of him and start making t-shirts for Sir Percival, because yes, we need Sir Percival merch. My goodness,
word to your publisher. Yeah,
I know. I'm gonna call Avon tomorrow and be like, the people demand it.
Well, not tomorrow because it's Labor Day.
So that's right. Yeah, not tomorrow. So yes, Tuesday then I'm on it.
Let's talk a little bit about you as a writer. You've been doing this for a number of years. If you had the opportunity to go back in time, knowing what you know now as a writer, what would you tell yourself when you were just starting out?
I definitely sort of the same advice that I give to aspiring writers, which is to be gentle with yourself. Like this business can be rough, and at the end of the day, you're making a product and people will like it or not like it. And so you don't need to be the first negative voice about something that you're working on. Nothing good comes out of sitting at the desk and telling yourself that you just can't do it, or why is it bad, or don't come at it quite so combatively, as it were. So yeah, I think that would sort of be it. It's just to and that I have a friend that says that if you're in this business long enough, everything will happen to you. Every good thing, every bad thing. You will get a movie option and you will have a series canceled and you'll get, and that's very true. And I think just sort of preparing myself maybe more for sort of the ups and downs of it. And I also think I would have diversified a little earlier. I really, truly love having 2 very separate writing careers, very different kinds of books. It's a lot of work to write 2 books a year and to promote 2 books a year. And I don't always feel like I do maybe the best job of the balance. A lot of the time I'm like, so here's this new Erin Sterling book, and now here's the new Rachel Hawkins book. And I feel like I should probably figure that out. But yeah, so I kind of wish I'd switched up genres maybe a little earlier, because also you don't feel quite as stressed out. You don't feel like your whole writing career is writing on this one book. There's always something new coming down the pipeline.
That's true. Do you get a lot of crossover between your readers, between Erin and Rachel?
I do actually, which I think part of it is that I'm extremely open, that I'm both, obviously, everybody knows. But my favorite thing is when people don't know. I absolutely love to sign books as Rachel Hawkins and then see someone realize that the X Hex is me too, or vice versa. That is really, really fun to me. So yeah, but I think a lot of people, some people that only read thrillers were willing to give the X Hex a try because they had liked my thrillers and they thought, well, So yeah, it's nice to see this sort of crossover. Although, Lord, when I'm signing things now, if people bring a stack, you really have to pay attention. Okay, am I Rachel or am I Erin? So.
the downside to many personalities.
Exactly.
When you are approaching a book, a writing project, what kind of path do you take? Do you always know in advance everything that's going? Do you just kind of sit down and open up your Word document or whatever you use and just start typing? How does a project evolve?
I definitely outline, which is not a thing that I used to do. I always kind of accept that, like, I always say that writing a book only teaches you how to write that book. So sometimes the process has to switch depending on what you're working on. But for me, after actually the wife upstairs really taught me the value of outlining. So, and again, that was, Lord, like my 12th book or something like that. And because of the nature of it, because it was right for hire, like I had to outline it. Like we outlined together, me and the people at Alloy. And I loved that process so much. And I found that it made the drafting much faster. And I absolutely hate drafting books. I like to edit, but I hate drafting. So I like to draft in big chunks as quickly as I possibly can to get that part of it over with. And having a really big outline before I get started helps with that. So I will spend months on like a 10 to 20 page Word document that's literally just like, this is what happens, where I write out all of the plot. And I like that because it means that I don't kind of get stuck. But at the same time, it's not like a super formal outline. No one is forcing me to stick to it. So if I get to something and I want to change it or it's not working, then I do it. Like I don't have to be a slave to the outline. In fact, my next suspense book, The Villa, the biggest twist in that book, I wrote the day before it was due. I think, it was not in that original outline at all. It was just that in the writing of the book, I was kind of like, oh, I don't like this and I need to kind of switch it up a little bit. So yeah, it's basically having a big outline, but also being very free with meeting the book where it is.
I think you're probably right, especially when it comes to mysteries and suspense and thrillers. You kind of have to know where things are going. I mean, some
Right.
writers can just kind of wing it and succeed, but
And do so. I talked last year to Megan Miranda about All the Missing Girls, which I had loved, and she did not outline that book. And I was like, what? That book is like genius, and you're telling it in reverse chronological order. And she did just open a Word document and go. I was so impressed by that. So yes, some people can absolutely do it and do it brilliantly. I am not one of them.
I think I'd read something else that you'd written that I thought was quite apropos and insightful when it comes to writing suspense novels or thrillers. I'm paraphrasing, but you had said something to the effect that you can't expect to surprise every reader, but you can hope to entertain them. And I think that is very true.
Yeah, exactly. Especially, I was I was a mystery and thriller reader. I read everything. So I'd read lots of thrillers, but I'd never written one before. And so I didn't really know that community of readers except sort of as one myself. And that was like one of the first sort of things I figured out. Like they are voracious and they consume everything, and they're super duper smart as a result. And they're very smart and knowledgeable about the genre. So yeah, there's no way that I can totally surprise all of them. They're too sharp for that. But yes, as long as they're satisfied, then I feel like, okay, that's good. That's all I can ask for, really.
I really connected with that because the Barbara Peters, who owns the bookstore, has been reading for like a million years, more or less.
Yeah.
And she knows everything, and she'll read a book and we'll both read the same book, and I will have loved it because it's got this wonderful twist and I'm just gobsmacked, and she'll say, oh, I figured it out on page 2.
Yeah. Exactly.
Thanks, Barbara. That makes me feel real smart.
I very rarely figure out which is hilarious given that like I come up with twists, but when I read, I try to turn that part of my brain off anyway. Because I'm like, no, just show me what you got. Like, yeah, exactly. Entertain me. That's all I'm asking.
What kind of reader are you? Can you share some things that you loved? Is there anything new that you're pushing?
Yeah, like I said, I read, everything. I also read like a lot of nonfiction because especially when I am like deep in a book, sometimes nonfiction is very soothing to my brain. I'm a big history geek, but have zero desire to actually write like historical fiction. I mean, some of like my upcoming thriller and then the next one after that both have like elements of historical fiction because there's different timelines.
Mhm.
But yeah, so I love nonfiction. I got really into cozy mysteries a couple of
Really?
years ago. Yes, which is so fun because I'd always wanted to read cozy mysteries, but I was very overwhelmed because there's so many.
Yes.
And I actually joined a book club with Murder by the Book in Houston.
Oh.
They do a curated cozy mystery box every month.
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, you know what? I'm going to let the professionals start sending me cozy mysteries. And that has really been, I enjoy the heck out of those. I recently just burned through almost all of the Rhys Bowen, Her Royal Spinus
Mhm.
series, which I loved. I just thought those were so fun. Right now I'm reading Taylor Jenkins Reid's Carrie Soto is Back, which I'm guessing like most of America is reading that right now because it just came out this week. I have a huge admiration for her as an author. I just think everything that she writes is so incredibly readable and absorbing. So yeah, I'm really enjoying that right now. So yeah, a little bit of everything really.
I'm going to pause for a brief commercial message and just say the Poison Pen also does subscription box services.
Oh, nice.
For those
Okay.
listening in, if you would like, but yeah, we do have our own cozy of the month. And
oh, cool. Well, I'm gonna check yours out too then, because like I could use lots of cozies, quite frankly. And again, I love like them being curated by
Yeah.
somebody that knows. So even authors go into a bookstore and go, I don't know where to start.
it's overwhelming, and I can understand how some readers feel, but the thing that always puzzles me is when people say they can't find anything to read. I'm always like, really? There's like
Yeah.
10 million things out there.
There's literally, yeah, like 50,000 books every month or something. Like,
You mentioned a little bit, but what can you tell us about what's coming next for you as an author?
yes. So the next thing for Rachel Hawkins is The Villa, which actually I have right here. The Villa, which
Oh my
comes out
God.
in January. And it is it's my favorite thing I've ever written in the suspense genre. It's two best friends who go on a sort of writing retreat in Italy at the scene of a famous murder, and the sort of ghosts of the past connect to our story in the present. It's also, I still can't believe they let me write this. The 1970s plot line is based on the summer that Mary Shelley spent at Lake Geneva writing Frankenstein. And so if you know anything about sort of Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and all that, there's some fun Easter eggs in those characters in the 70s. So yeah, I'm really excited for that one. And then I have sold 2 more romances, as I mentioned, to Avon.
Yay.
There will be a 3rd book in the Graves Glen series. Featuring, I mean, it's, there are 3 brothers.
Yeah, so you kind of figure
one,
there's going to be 3.
There might be 3 books. And that one is really fun too, because I'm tackling a slightly different season. It will be set around Yule. So I wanted to do witchy Christmas, basically.
Oh.
But there will still be a lot of sort of cozy goodness in that one. And then, as I mentioned, I have this sort of 60s set Gothic rom-com at some point in the future. And then I have another thriller that I'm actually wrapping up right now that's set in the mountains of North Carolina, which has been really fun to work on, and also has like a sort of 1950s, 1960s plot line as well. So yeah, a lot of stuff coming.
And how can readers learn more about you? Are you on particular social media platforms? Do you have a website?
Both. I am on Twitter and Instagram as @LadyHawkins. And then I have a website. It's rachelhawkinsbooks.com or erinsterlingbooks.com. They both, if you go on Rachel's site, you can easily get to Erin. If you go on Erin's site, you can easily get to Rachel. So a little bit of both.
Well, I can't believe how quickly our time has flown by. I want to thank Rachel, Erin, for being here today to talk about their new book, The Kiss Curse. Lots of wonderful things in the future, it sounds like. Thank you so much for taking time to visit at the Poison Pen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And thank you for listening in.